What is the biggest threat facing our world today? There are many different potential answers to this question. Some would say it's nuclear weapons, others would say world leaders, and then others, like me, would say climate change. I know there are games out there that go into the topic of climate change. One of the only ones I've played that covers it at least a little bit is The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. The third area of the game, which we revisit a few times, is the region of Lanayru. Upon first glance, it's a barren desert with very few sources of life. As we explore it, we find that there is a mining facility here, run by these robots that were developed for the sole purpose of mining materials. We also find a sand sea, which is just endless sand that goes on for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. Someone tell me that caught the Jungle Cruise reference I made because it's a great ride, I'm just saying. The results are astounding. We see green grass, some plants, and that sand sea was once a real sea, with water and a robot that used to sail the seas on his ship. You can probably imagine where my brain went with this. If you guessed that I had questions, you'd be absolutely correct. My meteorology brain asked this critical question. How did this even happen? How did this place go from being a landscape with some plants, green grass, and a beautiful sea to barren desert? The answer comes down to a process known as desertification, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's when a landscape changes from its previous form into a dry, sandy location. The process by which desertification happens, however, is often not one-sided. It's usually due to a multitude of factors rather than just one root cause. Let's see if we can't solve this puzzle together. Many different factors can result in desertification. One most people would immediately point a finger to is climate change. You've probably heard this term thrown around a lot, and many assume it's the warming of the temperatures of the Earth, due to many using it synonymously with global warming. However, I'm here to tell you the truth. Global warming and climate change are not the same thing. Global warming is the warming of the temperatures throughout the Earth over a long period of time. Climate change, on the other hand, is the long-term change in the average weather patterns that define climates across the globe. In the last century or so, we've used this to describe the unprecedented warming that we've seen, which, to be fair, is a change in climate. But climate change is not just discussing increasing temperatures. It encompasses a lot more than that. You will probably never hear me use the words global warming ever again on this channel because it just doesn't encompass everything that's changing in our climate due to the warming temperature trend we've seen over the last century or so. I usually stick to saying climate change, and that's what I'm going to stick with here. Climate change can bring about droughts and a lack of moisture across a wide area, which is possibly how Lanayru became a desert in the first place. But this can't happen out of nowhere. Many factors can result in climate change on Earth, but which ones could potentially apply to Lanayru? Well, let's start off simple, because besides highly induced climate change? I don't fully know who was living here before this became a desert. Whoever it was, that species-induced climate change, there are natural factors that could result in the changes we see in Lanayru. I'll start off by discussing naturally occurring climate change, or climate change that happens regardless of whatever humans or Hylians do on the planet that Lanayru is on. One such factor is the amount of solar radiation that the planet receives. If we receive more of it, or less, over an extended period of time, it can cause the planet to be warmer or colder and change the landscape. Specifically, if we have solar radiation, we increase temperature and decrease moisture content. Well, great, that could work, except there are two problems here. The first one is that the sun changes its output of radiation throughout 11-year cycles, which is far too short of a timeline for it to drastically change the amount of radiation a planet can receive. This leads us into problem 2. The sun doesn't drastically change its radiation output to the point where we'd get a desert like this over the course of several hundred or thousand years. Based on these reasons, I think we can safely eliminate this from our list of contenders as to why Lanayru went from swimming pool to quicksand land. Another factor that can change climate and result in a desert to form is a shift in land masses. We don't know where Lanayru was initially, so it's entirely possible that whatever land mass it was on previously has shifted to move to a different location, resulting in it becoming drier and losing the moisture it did have. I'm going to say we can eliminate this one too, since there are maps showing areas underneath the sand that still match up perfectly to places where Link can stand in the present day. It's likely not this one either because of that. A third factor that can impact climate is a volcanic eruption. When these happen, depending on the scale of the eruption, it causes the temperature to be cooler on average starting 6 months post-explosion and continue to be that way for another 2 to 3 years. This one could potentially work since Eldin, a literal volcano, exists on the surface and not too far away from Lanayru. Well, okay, this would work, if not for the fact that temperatures fall after a volcanic eruption. For desertification to occur, we need warmer temperatures, not colder. Not to mention that 2 to 3 years is far too short of a timescale for this to occur anyway. Given that volcanic eruptions only impact the climate for 2 to 3 years, and that they decrease temperature, not increase it, we could safely eliminate this one from the list as well. So our last option for naturally occurring climate change to be the answer, and not Hylian or whatever creature-induced climate change, is the Milankovitch cycle, assuming whatever planet we're on is similar to Earth and how it works. If you're looking at that and being like, yeah, sorry, we name a lot of things after scientists in meteorology, including Milankovitch. The Milankovitch cycle describes how Earth's eccentricity, obliquity, and precession change throughout thousands of years. Okay, whoa. That was a lot. Let's slow it down a bit. What are those things? Don't worry, I'll get us through this. I promise it's not as bad as it sounds. Eccentricity is the shape of Earth's orbit around the sun, and variations occur over 100,000-year periods. Now we're talking in timescales, that's a long time. Obliquity, also known as axial tilt, is the angle Earth is tilted at relative to its own orbital plane. The variations on this occur during 41,000-year periods. Precession is the direction of which Earth's axis of rotation is pointed. Many describe this as the wobbliness of Earth. The variations with this occur during 23,000-year periods. All relatively long periods of time. Potentially, this could be our answer. This last form of naturally occurring climate change seems like a lot and rather unnecessary given that it does take those thousands of years though, quite literally, for these features to change significantly in altering the planet's climate. But we have to keep something in mind. We're dealing with the legend of Zelda. We don't know how much time has passed between when the desert started forming and when the region was lush. We don't have an exact time frame of when this all happened, so we can't exactly rule this out from being a reason why Lanayru becomes a desert. It could have taken all these years, it also may have been a shorter time frame than we think. It's hard to say given that we don't know the exact time frame of when the desert started becoming what we know it to be in present day without the interference of the time shift zones. While desertification can indeed be caused by naturally occurring climate change, it's also possible that whatever beings were in Lanayru before it became a desert caused this place to change in climate. As we've seen here on Earth, a person can have an impact on their environment. The most common example most people turn towards is the burning of fossil fuels, which has led to increased emissions of carbon dioxide and similar greenhouse gases, which has trapped more solar radiation and terrestrial radiation, or radiation from Earth, into the planet's atmosphere. Since this has happened, well, energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed, so this radiation, being trapped, went into the land, oceans, and sky and has resulted in the unprecedented warming of the Earth since the 1800s. Can we say that this is what's happening here, though? It's hard to say. We can tell that this was an advanced mechanical sort of civilization. If we turn back time and look around Lanayru, we see electric fences, floating mine carts, conveyor belts, a small motorboat, and a lot more. There's a lot of technological advancements to be had, but do any of them emit greenhouse gases? Well, sadly, I can't confirm or deny that. There's no way to tell if there was extra greenhouse gases emitted during the process of creating these marvels. I can take a guess that there weren't any gases being emitted from these machines since they don't show it at any point. The closest we come to that is the motorboat on the Sand Sea, but it doesn't emit any gases, so it's possible that it doesn't either. Either way, it's not possible to tell. So what could the beings have done to result in this place becoming a desert? Well, we know that it wasn't deforestation, another culprit of desertification. Since when we hit the time shift stones, we don't see any trees, not to mention that it's mentioned to the player during the game's story that the soil in the Lanayru isn't conducive to plant development beyond a desert flower and some grass patches. Trees can't put down deep enough roots to result in there being a forest to begin with, let alone have deforestation further down the line. Could it have been overgrazing? Well, maybe, but the only animal there seems to be any evidence of is the thunder dragon, and that's... well, I don't get the sense that dragon is overgrazing on grass. He doesn't seem to be that big of a fan of it from what I can see, but I don't know. I don't know the guy very well. What could it be then? I do have an answer. I'm not sure what you'll think of it, but I have one. While the soil may be too weak to grow trees, we know that Lanayru once had vegetation as evidenced by desert flowers. Lanayru could probably grow different types of vegetation besides flowers. It may have been able to grow crops meant for consumption even. Assuming more people moved to Lanayru to build the robots used in the mining facility, the locals could have planted more crops to sustain that population. If this happened, agriculture, and anything relating to it in this region may have been strained beyond the capacity of which the land could handle. This means the soil would lose its moisture trying to sustain the land, but it would be stretched a bit too thin. The soil would slowly turn to sand, and eventually, the land that was once green would become dusty and dry. I'm willing to bet that the climate change we see in this game is due to both the intervention from the beings that used to live in Lanayru, whoever they are, and possibly the Milankovitch cycle, depending on how much time has passed between when the desert was capable of having greenery and when it was not. Those are just my thoughts though. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good day.